Greetings, viewers. Welcome back to Phasmophobia. I've been wanting to have a closer look at the Banshee for a while now, so before I prestiged and lost my tier 3 items, I ran some experiments to determine how insane the roaming ability of the Banshee really is. But before we get into that, let's go over what makes a Banshee special. The Banshee is easily one of the most complex ghost types in Phasmophobia, and is definitely one of my favourites, even though they annoy me sometimes. So what do Banshees do? The most significant mechanic of the Banshee is that it will choose a target to be its victim when the contract begins. If you're in single player, then obviously you're the target. The Banshee will choose a new target if the previous one is killed. Outside of hunts, the Banshee will roam to its target if they are inside the map and are on the same floor as the ghost. The Banshee uses this ability extremely often, so finding the ghost room can often be challenging if you're up against a Banshee. In fact, the reason the Banshee can only roam to its target if they are on the same floor is because during beta testing it was found that the Banshee would constantly end up near the front door on large maps, particularly if the ghost room was far away from the front door, as it would never have enough time to return in between roams. Besides its roaming ability, the Banshee also has a higher chance to perform singing ghost events over other types of ghost events. If the target touches one of these ghost events, thereby dispelling it prematurely, they'll lose 15% sanity instead of the usual 10%. Any player other than the target will only lose the usual 10% if they touch a singing Banshee. And as usual, if the ghost event doesn't touch a player and isn't ended prematurely, no player will lose any sanity. A popular misconception is that the Banshee looks at or moves towards its target during ghost events. While this isn't a true mechanic, there may be a high rate of coincidence as the Banshee is often in close proximity to its target and therefore just out of chance may end up targeting it more with ghost events. The Banshee has the normal hunting threshold of 50%. However, unlike every other ghost, it only checks the sanity of its target, not the average team's sanity. That means the Banshee can be both an early or late hunter in multiplayer because it only matters how much sanity the target has lost, not the rest of the team. As long as the target is in the map during a hunt, the Banshee will behave normally except, and it's a very big exception here, it will ignore all other players than its target. It will never pursue or harm the other players even if they walk on the ghost. If the target isn't in the map when the hunt begins, the Banshee will act like a normal ghost, pursuing and harming all players as usual. Finally, the Banshee has a unique interaction with the parabolic microphone. Every time a paranormal sound is produced, there is a 1/3 chance that you'll hear a Banshee scream. Getting the Banshee scream can be quite frustrating. In my testing, the Banshee often paths onto and behind me, so simply pointing the mic at the ghost room doesn't guarantee it's within range to get readings. In one of my 30-minute tests, I heard 14 whispers, but not a single scream. The other 30-minute blocks gave me 4, 7, and 11 screams, and approximately double those amounts in whispers. This illustrates the variability that can happen when trying to get the Banshee scream, and why it sometimes takes a very long time. So in summary, the Banshee has unique roaming behaviour, ghost event behaviour, hunt behaviour, and a special interaction with the paramic. That's quite a lot of unique behaviours. So how do you tell a Banshee? Well, in multiplayer, the hunting behaviour is extremely obvious, and it's definitely the easiest way to tell a Banshee without using evidence. If you survive giving the ghost a hug during a hunt while your friends are running and hiding, it's probably a Banshee. In solo, it's far more difficult to tell since you can't just sacrifice a friend to figure out whether it's a Banshee. I tend to use the roaming to determine a Banshee, as the scream can be very inconsistent. It might take you 20 or 30 minutes, or, and I have had this happen, you walk into the map and get the scream within the first 10 seconds of the contract. It's very inconsistent. If you're sure the ghost is roaming to your location, Phantoms and Wraiths, the only other two options, are usually simple to rule out, leaving you with being a Banshee. If I'm unable to test the roam, let's say if the ghost room is Tanglewood Basement, I'll resort to testing the sanity drain of a singing ghost event. This isn't my go-to method because you need to know your sanity before the ghost event with decent accuracy, because a 5% difference is a little tricky to notice. I've spoken a lot about the roaming ability of the Banshee, including that it happens extremely often, but how does it work and how frequently does it actually happen? I had read that the Banshee roam worked by replacing the long roam that ghosts normally perform that allows them to move long distances. This differs from the Phantom, whose roam is an ability that it can activate at random. I believe this is why the Banshee's roam ability is far more frequent, and also why the Banshee's roam ability does not give an EMF reading, while the Phantom's does. So, on to the testing. As I started running my tests, I noticed a few unusual behaviours that led me to running some additional tests. Firstly, the ghosts sometimes failed to trigger the motion sensor closest to me. I was wondering if the Banshee might be setting its waypoint nearby rather than on top of me, its target. So I ran a number of tests using sensors and salt. Without fail, the Banshee always stood on the salt that was at my feet, seeming like it was moving to my exact location, not just a point nearby. However, it unexpectedly seemed to take different paths sometimes. I had expected it to always follow the shortest path, but it doesn't seem to do this every time. The second behaviour I observed is that the ghost often interrupted its return journey to its favourite room by roaming back to me. This threw a wrench in my original plan on how to quantify how often the Banshee roams, which was to measure the duration spent in its ghost room between roams. Ultimately, I couldn't come up with a more accurate method of measurement, so this is still how I came to my final results. But when I go through them, keep in mind that they probably underestimate how often the Banshee actually uses its ability. The final issue I encountered was that the motion sensors are almost imperceptible in the footage that I collected. I had thought that the bright flashes of the Tier 3 motion sensor in the midst of the darkness would be obvious, but they nearly vanish in Phasmophobia's lighting. I have done the best I can to make them visible, including turning the brightness up to max, but they are still quite hard to see, as you can probably see. I ran the tests over 2 games, one with roaming set to low and one set to high. For both games, I recorded 30 minutes at 100% sanity and at 0% sanity. I only noticed the lighting issue after I performed the test with roaming set to high, so the recording being shown behind me is when roaming was set to low. I was surprised to find that there wasn't a significant difference in the roaming frequency under all conditions tested. The average duration between roams was between 18 seconds and 26 seconds across tests, with 22 seconds being the average across all tests. The Banshee appeared to interrupt its return journey with another roam more often when my sanity was at 0%, resulting in fewer full trips between me and its ghost room. Any further conclusions regarding the roaming frequency beyond these are difficult to make without considerably more data. One thing that is certain, the Banshee roams extremely often, as long as its target is on the same floor. I would say if a ghost doesn't roam to a player within 2 minutes outside of hunts, it probably isn't a Banshee. This isn't an absolute certainty though, so you'll probably want to test for longer just in case. In addition to the roaming frequency, I also wanted to test my hypothesis that the Banshee is forbidden from performing interactions during the roam to its target. During the game with the roaming set to high, I had placed a number of items along the path in order to perform this test. The result was quite striking, especially at 0% when the ghost was most active. Before and after the roam, including on the return journey, The ghost was very active, performing interactions easily heard on the paramic. As soon as it begins a roam to its target, all interactions cease until it arrives. I believe this is important because I suspect it also applies to hunting. This is probably significant on larger maps only, but it is especially significant for the Apocalypse challenge on Sunny Meadows. If hunting is truly blocked during the roam to the target, it greatly increases the chance that a Banshee will initiate a hunt in close proximity to the player. So with all these tests finished, what did we learn? 1. The Banshee does seem to move directly onto the player. Secondly, for the distance shown in this video, the Banshee spends an average of around 20 seconds in its ghost room between roams. The Banshee also seems to be capable of roaming multiple times per minute, which is truly insane. Thirdly, there's tentative evidence to suggest that when a Banshee begins its roam, it will not perform interactions, possibly not hunts, until it has completed that roam to its target. That's about it for this video. I also want to determine if the Banshee is able to roam out of the ghost room like a normal ghost, or if it's limited to using its special roam. While 25 minutes of me sitting in the truck recording the Banshee witnessed it never leaving its room, when I tried to run a control with other ghost types, they also, more often than not, refused to leave their room, even when roaming was set to high. I think there might be an issue with Brownstone High School and roaming, so maybe I'll make another video looking into this a bit deeper in the future. Thanks for watching, and until next time remember, the dose makes the poison.